Ladies and gentlemen, here is the latest bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News.
Step into the sand.
This is Macabre Grimoire with Ari Show, Travis Nye, and Robert Melee.
Hey everybody, welcome to Macabre Grimoire, Chapter 16, Mind Ghosts and Spirits. I'm your host, Ari Show, here with my co-host, Robert Melling, and special guest, Dominic Winnicky.
Who's that guy?
Hey!
Who's that guy?
Sitting in the corner.
Sounds like how I talk to my cats. What's that? What do you want?
I just got off the phone with one of my nieces who's like 2 and some change.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it's a lot of talking like that to
Yeah.
get her to interact with the phone.
Yeah, I used to babysit this little girl who was like 18 months old, and I go, what's that? What's that? And she'd be like, what? What's that? Like, she would say it back to you. It was really funny. Like, I could get her to do it for anything. And
Awesome.
I feel like I can do it with my cats and the dog.
Very nice.
When the dog was around. Like, they'd be into it.
Right.
Like, that's what I'm saying.
Dominic's just like, smile and nod.
Uh-huh.
And nod.
So, okay. So, we're talking about ghosts that basically inhabit a mine. Like, specific to a mine.
Yeah, ghosts are...
But not really a ghost, but like more of an elemental.
Superstitions that are strongly associated with the underground and mining, because miners in general tend to be highly superstitious from what we found.
Mm-hmm.
And the catalyst for this was that we recorded a live episode that you'll get to hear in a few weeks with a person who is an expert on mine
Ghosts. Mine
ghosts.
ghosts.
I guess, as close as you get to being an expert on that particular type of
Right.
ghost.
And not really an expert, just a lot of experience.
Yes.
Because they talked about there's no such thing as experts in the paranormal field, which I totally support. But yeah, a lot of experience with it, so
this is kind of a prelude to that pre-recorded episode. It won't be the next episode that comes out, but the one after that. It'll be our live from SuperCon episode, and you'll read more about that as that gets closer.
right. So like the next one.
Yes.
I just wanted to say next.
So the one that's going to come out right
foreshadowing.
around Halloween, actually.
Oh, I like how you did that. That's fun.
So the first, and we could call them spirits, we could call them ghosts. The first entities we're going to talk about are called Tommyknockers. And the thing is, they have a bunch of different names, and there's a bunch of different traditions for them all over the world. And in some parts of the world, they are ghosts. They are the ghosts of, like, miners who didn't make it out.
Oh.
And then in some places, like the ones that we have in the United States that American miners believe in come from Welsh tradition. And in the Welsh tradition, they are fey creatures like the little people or like trolls or stuff like that.
Sure.
So there's multiple traditions that we'll get into towards the end here. One in the Ukraine that takes a very different direction from that. But the ones that Americans, basically came to the United States is because we had a lot of, Irish, English, Scottish, Cornish immigrants, and especially, from Cornwall and that area. Described little creatures as people who were 2 feet tall, had big heads, long arms, wrinkled faces, and white whiskers. They wear tiny versions of a miner's standard garb and commit random mischief, such as stealing the miner's unattended tools and food. So I'm going to pull up a visual aid here.
Yeah.
For Arian, Dominic.
Oh,
So
God.
this is-
Oh, okay, that one.
This is what they actually look like. The one I'm pointing to that kind of just looks like a standard like D&D analog gnome.
Sure.
basically.
You know what's funny when...
But they get, in a lot of people when they think Tommyknocker, they think the thing next to it, which looks like basically like a roughed up alien.
Well, that's...
which is because of the Stephen King film and book and then film, the Tommyknockers.
Right, that's where I'm familiar with the Tommyknockers, so...
Yeah, which comes from a completely different direction than the actual legends of Tommyknockers.
Oh,
Right.
so what is Stephen King's book? Is it like about mining go?
No.
Oh,
I'm not sure.
It's basically about this woman who lives in Maine, and she's walking along one day and trips over what she thinks is a rock. And as she starts to dig around the rock to pull it out of her walking path, she discovers that it keeps going down, 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 down. That it's basically a massive spaceship that's been buried in the ground.
Jesus.
He got the inspiration from an H.P. Lovecraft story
Oh, okay.
called the Color Out of Space.
Color Out of Space, that's the very first H.P. Lovecraft story I ever read. That is a fantastic story.
Yeah, it's a small poem, and it mentions about the Tommyknockers. So, how he got the aliens out of that, I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, Color Out of Space is very aliens, and then them like contaminating the soil and stuff like that.
Okay.
And so I kind of, and because they dug it out of the ground, I could see why he's like Tommyknockers, spirits, creatures from the ground.
Sure.
But still, that's quite a leap. But
It was-
a little bit
Stephen
of
King.
artistic license.
Right. What's funny about the picture of the little gnome-like creature for the Tommyknocker is when you described it as having white whiskers. I wasn't thinking like a beard. I was thinking like cat whiskers.
Looks like the underwear gnomes from South Park.
Oh Jesus.
Free profit.
Yeah, exactly.
But what's step 2?
Apparently, it's harass miners.
Apparently. All right. So
In
go
the
for it.
1820s, immigrant Welsh miners brought tales of the knockers and left their unwatched items and warning knocks to western Pennsylvania when they gravitated there to work in the mines. Cornish miners, much sought after their years of following gold and silver rushes, brought them to Colorado, Nevada, and California. When asked if they had relatives who could work the mines, the Cornish miners always said something along the lines of, well, me, my cousin Jack over in Cornwall would come, and could ye pay is a boat ride, and so came to be called Cousin Jacks. The Cousin Jacks, as notorious for losing tools as they were for diving out of shafts just before they collapsed, attributed this to their diminutive friends and refused to enter new mines until they were assured by management that the knockers were already on duty. Even non-Cornish miners who helped to work deep in the earth, where the noisy support timbers creaked and groaned, came to believe in the Tommyknockers. The American interpretation of knockers seems to be more ghostly than elvish. Belief in the knockers in America remained well into the 20th century. When one large mine closed in 1956, the owners sealed the entrance, and 4th, 5th, and 6th generation Cousin Jacks circulated a petition calling on the mine owners to set the knockers free so that they could move on to other mines, and the owners complied. Belief in Nevada persisted amongst its miners as late as the 1930s.
I wonder what mine that was that they wanted to have, like, opened up.
That's a good question, but it's funny because I tried to find it and I couldn't. I don't know if it was a podcast or something I read or something like that, but I just got done with a story that was talking about leaving a saucer of milk for the Tommyknockers at the mouth of a mine that was like in Scotland or someplace like that, and that made me think too of like what was it, American Gods, that TV show. They're the leprechaun that's a character in that show. When they tell his story of how he came to America or whatever, it was a woman who kept leaving a saucer of milk on the windowsill to feed the fairy folk and bring good luck.
That's interesting.
And that's what brought him over. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you keep going. That was it.
That was it.
Oh, okay, sorry. It's interesting you say that because I have a witches calendar at my desk at work, and each month is to celebrate the different times of the season, and then they will always include a different, spell, so to speak, for like what to do for like each season. And last month was about basically communication with the fairies, and a gateway to the fairies or the fae is like a circle of mushrooms, and I forget specifically what they called it, but in order to basically ask for the goodwill of the fae and to bless like your harvest or whatever, you need to bring them a thimbleful of a heady brew, and then like basically delicate like pastries that are like very well decorated, and then that will like please the fae. And I was like paranoid about finding like a circle of mushrooms because I'm like, I don't know if I want a portal to their world near me. But I just thought that was really interesting that this is also, it's not just within, you know, this is, you know, also the time, like basically like these elementals always require some sort of like sweet treat or alcohol or milk, you know, something.
Yeah, I'll talk about that a little bit when we get to the end because I have a
sure.
list of like my kind of like final observations on all these creatures.
Oh, sure.
Food, it's like mines are one of them was that miners are very superstitious because it's hazardous work. So it's just like sailors where it's like their survival is a lot of luck as much as anything else.
Oh, yeah.
So they carry a lot of superstitions.
Yep.
Because it helps them compensate for the high stress. And let's see. And then another one was that food is going to be a really recurring theme with a lot of these creatures. And feeding them to keep them happy.
Right.
Speaking of, if that's all we're going to say about the Tommy knockers, the next one here, this is one I threw in that's not necessarily a specific to mining ghost.
Yeah, I saw this on the notes and I was like, this is interesting.
But this is stories I've heard of before. They're called hungry ghosts. Now, when you go to Deadwood in South Dakota in the Black Hills, which is a famous former mining town from a Black Hills gold rush, one of the things that always struck me about Boot Hill, the big like Western cemetery out there, is all of the mass graves for Chinese miners. And they're all like one Chinese marker with Chinese characters out amongst all these very like Wild West tombstones.
Oh, yeah.
But it'll be like one marker and then a big pile of rock, and it's like, oh, that's a mass grave, and there's like 50 or 60 Chinese miners in that grave.
Jesus.
So it's like, it was very, very hazardous work, and especially the further west you go, the more a lot of this mining work was done by Chinese people. Because they were, seen as expendable by the people who were running the mines and things like that.
Right.
Anyway, a lot of them come from parts of China that have a very Chinese Eastern tradition. It's kind of a mix of traditional Chinese ancestor worship and then kind of a hybridized thing with Buddhism. And what this particular tradition is called is hungry ghosts. So these families venerate their dead, and we'll even have like festivals for their ancestor worship and stuff like that. Now, my question, and I've actually like read stories and accounts and stuff like that before, is like, what happens with these poor Chinese workers who they have no family in this part of the world to mourn them, and no one here
honor them, right?
Honors like those traditions and things like that. Well, according to Chinese folklore, to quote Archer, you want ants? Because that's how you get ants. If you want hungry ghosts, that's how you get hungry ghosts.
Oh, damn.
Which are a very specific type of Chinese, basically, poltergeist.
Jesus.
A hungry ghost is a concept in Chinese Buddhism and Chinese traditional religion, representing beings who are driven by intense emotional needs in an animalistic way. The term, and I'm not even going to try...
Igwai? I don't know.
Literally means hungry ghost is the Chinese translation of the term, or perta in Buddhism. Hungry ghosts play a role in Chinese Buddhism, Taoism, as well as Chinese folk religion. The term is not to be confused with the generic term for ghosts, skoi, the spirit of a deceased ancestor. The understanding is that all people become regular ghosts when they die, and then would slowly weaken and eventually die for a second time.
Jesus.
Yeah, I know. All of this is like Chinese folklore religion. As you get into this stuff, it's like, it's already hardcore, but it gets worse for these poor guys.
Yeah.
Hungry ghosts, by contrast, are a much more exceptional case and would only occur in the very unfortunate circumstances, such as a whole family was killed or when a family no longer venerates their ancestors.
Ew.
And I mention this because, man, there's like tons and tons of, it's China, so there's like tons of info and background and festivals all over China for it. So it's a big deal there. They even have a month of the year that is the month where instead of calling them hungry ghosts, the word that they use for them translates as like brother god or the good god, because that's the month that hungry ghosts are extra powerful. And so they don't insult them and will not call them hungry ghosts to their face during that time because their power is too great.
There's a lot of superstition though I think in China, right?
In the like folk religion.
Yeah.
Yep. So hungry ghosts. There we go. Okay. So here's a tapestry depicting just like the hungry ghost concept. I think these are some like Buddhist like demons tormenting the hungry spirits. I mean, eating anything, just like balls of fire, stuff like that. But so they're portrayed as just like rotting with their bellies swollen and stuff like that. And
Poor ghosties.
yes. And just ravenously eating like anything they can get their hands on, just totally driven by, in the folklore, like animalistic raw emotion. Like, if they were killed in a mine or something like that, which is like where the story I got this from comes from, is like, just filled with like rage. Filled with like sadness.
Could you imagine, I don't know, so this might be a stretch, but like, so you're brought up, in this belief that if your remains aren't honored, then you're going to be an angry spirit. Like you're going to become this in the spirit world. Could you imagine leaving your body and knowing that you're not being honored? And then like just like for me as a medium, like I can only imagine the amount of people stuck in that old belief of I have to stay here. I have to keep my energy here to focus all of my energy on, making sure that I'm being honored, and just that's the thing that kind of bums me out is the fact that most of these people might be sticking around because they're trying to fulfill, being honored. At what point, then they might forget that they don't need that. They actually have more support on the spirit side. I'm getting really deep here. I don't know. But that's kind of what I'm thinking. That's what that's where my mind goes is like, the evolution of the, from physical being to spiritual being and just having that belief because there's a lot of people that will stick around because they want like things a certain way. You know what I mean? Like that's why some spirits haunt like houses because they like maybe like the housekeeper wants to make sure that you're always taken care of, and that's like that they obsess over that. So then in spirit, they continue to stick around to make sure that they're always there to do that because they can't let go of the physical world. And so I don't know. That's my interpretation. I don't know.
And I find it interesting, because it's like you were talking about the whole like people kind of breaking free of that belief system and stuff like that. It makes me think a little bit that thread really runs deep in China, even though they had the Cultural Revolution in the 60s when a lot of the like folk religion and stuff like that became forbidden knowledge. And
oh my gosh.
Records of that were destroyed and people who practiced stuff like that were killed.
Jesus.
Something like 20 million people died in the Cultural Revolution.
I had no idea that this even happened.
Okay. Yeah, it was kind of a big deal in the 60s in China.
Oh,
where
wow.
The Chinese basically were like, we're going to completely reset history.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's disgusting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Dark times. Anyway.
In the 60s?
Yep.
That wasn't that long ago.
Nope.
Oh my gosh.
No.
Did you know?
No, I didn't know.
Oh, that's amazing.
Really?
No.
Wow.
I unfortunately don't have a lot of China's history,
And we don't. Like a Western classroom hardly ever touches like China which is a shame because
right, it's a beautiful culture.
It's beautiful. It's ancient. I mean, they had, like, cities and money and paper currency and stuff like that. While in Europe, they were still like, "I trade you this rock for this rock."
Right.
Okay.
I like the accent you gave that because Europe's very refined to me.
Europe rednecks.
Yes.
You get down there with that sword now. You slay that dadgum dragon.
Dang, man.
So yeah, hungry ghosts are not to be trifled with, and this you can like go forever with the tapestries of depicting them like tormenting the living and just desperately scraping by for food and all sorts of like terrible things that they do to people. But yeah, that gives you some idea.
But didn't you say they die a second death at some point?
Yeah.
That
was something that was mentioned in
It's kind of horrible.
The one article where it's just like they're basically dying a second death over again.
So this is my interpretation of that. I feel like in their belief system that they have to stick around as a ghost or in spirit to maybe help their family, like a happy ghost. Then you have these hungry ghosts that are sticking around for the exact same reason, except they're angry. So you have two people of the exact, like basically one's happy, one's hungry. Then it's like basically when they die a second time, I feel like that's their spirit then being absorbed up into source, or as other people might say, like heaven or whatever, basically like moving on. So I don't think that they're dying. They're not necessarily dying. I feel like they're just being absorbed back up to where they basically, where their energy belongs.
Sure.
To maybe be born again. Who knows?
Well, it's a hybridization with a lot of Buddhist tradition too, as well. So that could actually, I'm sure there's villages where they think that, and there's villages where they think something completely different. That's the thing with Chinese folk religion, is it's not a monoculture by any stretch of the imagination. So there's a lot of folks and beliefs and taboos surrounding the hungry ghosts, especially the Hungry Ghost Festival. Spirits are thought to be dangerous and can take many forms, including snakes, moths, birds, foxes, wolves, and tigers. Some can even use the guise of a beautiful man or woman to seduce and possess. One story refers to a ghost which takes the form of a pretty girl and seduces a young man until a priest intervenes and sends the spirit back to hell. It is believed that possession can cause illness and or mental disorders.
Oh, so it's just interesting ways to like describe like shitty stuff happening to them.
Yep.
Without basically taking responsibility, like, oh, I just ran into a fox on a trail, that's my bad. I should have respected the fox's territory, versus like, oh, it's a hungry ghost. Yeah. I don't know. That's just my thought. I'm not trying to knock it though.
No, but that's a super, super condensed nutshell version of what hungry ghosts are.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I always think of them when I see those markers, because you'll see festivals in China in cemeteries where the plaques for the ancestors are and stuff like that during a certain month of the Chinese calendar, where they'll set out like just a buffet of food for their ancestors.
Right,
and
right.
Keep them from becoming hungry ghosts.
Right, right.
And like even that month I was mentioning earlier, where they have a tradition of like, respecting the hungry ghosts during that season, they'll just put food out on their front porch for any ghosts, and then especially considered like important to burn sage on the front step. And it was like the more sage you could afford to burn on your in your front doorway or whatever, it was like a sign of wealth and status, and it was believed that, well, that helps them. That's why they're so fortunate, is because then they're lucky and they have fewer ill spirits around them and stuff like that.
Right, right.
And so for my final mind ghost, I came across this one while looking at the Tommy knockers. This is actually one from Ukraine that is much more associated with the idea of like a ghost or a dead spirit of dead miners specifically, that like seeking revenge and things like that. So and this is from Ukraine. The Shogun are mythological spirits of the mines. The legend of the Shogun is distributed mainly in mining towns in Donbass, a disputed region claimed by Ukraine. In the north, one can hear several legends about the spirits of the mines. The spirits are usually good, but can be wicked. There's no single point of view or etymology from the word. Explanations for the legends include it's the nickname of a miner whose soul, according to legend, walks in a fur coat at the bottom of the mine with a torch in his hand and burns the gas, the fire damp. The name of a cruel mining master, Shubin, who slew workers underground. It also sounds in Ukrainian a lot like the sound of methane rushing into a chamber. And so they gave it, that's one of the theories they threw out there, is that it's the sound of methane. Shoo, shoo, apparently is how you say methane in Ukrainian.
Or the sound of methane.
Yeah, that's their, what's that word when it's a word to represent a sound? I don't know.
I know what
Automatopoeia.
Sure.
Nah, it doesn't sound right.
I don't think that's it, but yeah.
No,
we'll go with it. It's a better answer than I had.
Yeah.
Which often accumulates in the mines. Let's see. So, one specific story that made this jump out for me...
Yeah, it's an onomatopoeia, sorry.
Okay, excellent.
Good job.
Comic book knowledge for the win.
Yay! So, I'm going to slaughter this pronunciation, but Bela Koroliva
Good job.
is a version of these that they call the White Queen. In the beliefs of some miners, that the Shogun spirit appears as a female. Once a miner from the Slodovosk region went missing. After a long search, he was finally found in a mine naked. He went mad and was taken to a mental hospital. Then some other miners went mad. All of them told about a white queen, a beautiful woman who tried to cheat them, but the miners could not bear her towering beauty and completely lost their reason. People have long mocked these stories and passed them off by the mental hospitals where the miners were treated and said that it was the home of the White Kings. Since the White Queen has disappeared from the mine, but no one can tell exactly when or where she would come again. So, yeah, I thought that was an interesting one because it gets into like a kind of a spirit fae kind of thing, but also at the same time getting into a almost not harpy, a siren. Kind of reminds me of a siren a little bit. But sure. I noticed that trend, and then that with the hungry ghosts is that ghosts and like fears about mental illness seem to mesh together a lot.
I'm trying to find this story about it reminded me of this so about the Shubin. It reminded me of this, god dang, it's like an older, this happened a long time ago, and I'm trying to look up like miners buried alive and all this stuff, and apparently a lot of miners get buried alive like today.
It is incredibly dangerous.
Oh my god.
Even today with modern safety standards, it is ridiculously dangerous.
There was a miner that was buried alive for 17 years until they finally got him out.
How did
what?
Well, I know those kids that got trapped in the mine, they figured they were going to leave them there for a couple months. But then it started to get really bad because they could send water and food down this long tube.
Yeah.
But I forget the reasoning why.
I think because the water was going to rise too high or something like that.
Because it was monsoon season. So the water was just going to keep rising in the cave.
Right.
So they just basically needed to just haul them out.
Right.
But this particular story that I'm thinking of is, and I apologize, I can't remember all of the specifics, but there was this mine, and I want to say it was, we'll say in the 1800s, and there was 2 workers in the bottom of the mine, and it ended up like they hit like a water vein or whatever, and the mine started flooding, and like basically it kind of collapsed in on top of them. And so the rest of the miners that were already out of the mine decided, well, basically we figure, they're already goners, we're just going to leave them to just be there because, just how bad the disaster was. Yeah. So it kind of so they closed up the mine and they stopped all the work. Well, then years later, the town decides to develop that area for a tunnel because they need to like make through traffic through this mountain or whatever. Well, then as they are digging out this to make a tunnel, they find a makeshift raft and the bodies of these 2 miners, meaning that they had survived the collapse and the flooding and were basically waiting.
Listen to the Lore podcast?
Yeah, I think that's probably where I heard it then.
Episode 2, my favorite episode of the entire series, The Murder Hole.
Oh my god.
Yeah. I'm saving it for like a week where I can really pour into research on it. But that podcast episode is probably partially responsible for this podcast existing.
Yeah.
So,
is it really on the Lore? I thought I heard it somewhere else.
Well, it could be lots of places because it's an incredible story.
It is,
but, it's definitely Lord told that episode, or that story, or one just like it in episode 2 with the whole finding the makeshift raft, meaning that guys had been alive down there for like 19 years or like
a while
years ago. And
yeah, I do remember, because I listened to Lore the first handful of episodes, and I vaguely remember that.
Yeah, the Bloody Pit.
There you go.
Yep. The Hoosac Tunnel. That's what it is. Oh my god. Yeah, so now that tunnel is like really fucking haunted. But like apparently the miners also like help give people light to like get out of the tunnel. I don't know. It's kind of an interesting dynamic. But that's what the Shubin kind of reminded me of.
9.0 on the weird shitometer.
Yes. So yeah, that was what I was thinking. I was also trying to find a story of someone having a real life encounter with Tommy knockers, or basically elementals, and I found one, but I don't know, it seems kind of longish. I mean, I don't even know if it's true. Like, I haven't even like vetted it or anything like that. I just thought like it'd be nice to like close out with like a story of somebody actually having this encounter. But like if I'm gonna, oh shit, let me just just briefly scroll so you can see, but it's like really, really long.
Sure.
So I don't know. We can maybe we'll post that on the show notes later, like after this episode goes live.
Send me that link and I'll make sure it's in the show notes.
It's from mysteriousuniverse.org, and honestly, if we find out that this story is like mostly bullshit, then we'll just maybe put a disclaimer that says like the story's bullshit, but enjoy.
Yeah.
For entertainment purposes only.
Pretty much. So I'm gonna send that link right now to our group chat. And Travis, who isn't here, is going to be all like, what? I think that we both gave him the same, like...
Yeah, I believe the reason Travis can't be here tonight is he's in some sort of sorcerer's battle for the soul of the city of Sioux Falls.
There you go.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's my rundown of some common mining spirits and ghosts in a nutshell.
Nice. Well done, sir.
So once again, if you like what we do or want us to, get into a topic, anything like that, feel free to reach out to us through the show page, macabregrimoire.com, or the SiouxEmpire.com, our parent page. And then also, if you really like what we do, be sure to give us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts, and support us on Patreon. We would love to hear from you. And that's all I got this week.
Same. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Dominic.
No problem.
Yeah.
Macabre Grimoire is a production of the SiouxEmpire.com. Learn more at macabregrimoire.com.